Lawmakers advance a bill eliminating the requirement to get a permit to carry a concealed weapon.
As Rob Masson reports, it passed a House committee despite opposition from the Louisiana Police Chiefs Association.
In a state with one of the highest rates of gun violence in the U.S., an Oil City lawmaker says it's time to remove permitting requirements for anyone who wants to carry a concealed weapon.
We are an open carry state. If you're 18 years of older and are not a criminal, you're able to open carry. This bill basically just mimics that bill, and then you will be able to conceal carry at that same age.
With the support of the National Rifle Association and other pro-gun groups, the House Criminal Justice Committee passed Representative Danny McCormick's measure, in spite of concerns over an amendment lowering the age threshold to 18 instead of 21.
So once you reach the age of 18, unless you're otherwise prohibited from possessing a gun through maybe a criminal offense, you will be allowed to conceal carry a firearm in our state. And it's not just our residents, it's anyone who comes into our state.
18, particularly without any training, is too young. I hear the argument all the time, we can serve our country at 18, but I assure you our 18-year-olds serving the country are very well trained.
The measure passed in spite of opposition from the Chiefs of Police Association, which says gun violence in 25 states who allowed anyone to carry a concealed weapon without a license has gone up.
In these other states, Georgia is one of the most recent ones, by the way, when permitless concealed carry was enacted, assaults went up on an average of 9.5%. Gun assaults went up on average 21.6%. And gun homicides went up a whopping 34.9%.
Because the way that I see things through the lens as a domestic violence survivor is that this will only further embolden dangerous individuals in our communities and people who terrorize their families to have more access.
With none of the 4 Democrats on the House Criminal Justice Committee in attendance, Republican Representative Joe Marino of Gretna cast the only no vote.
And a lot of people will vote for a bill that they don't necessarily like because they do not want to be perceived as someone who is against the Second Amendment.
This legislation simply puts law-abiding citizens of Louisiana on equal footing with the criminals.
Governor John Bel Edwards is speaking out against the bill.
My opinion has not changed. I think it's not good policy to allow anyone 18 and over to carry a concealed weapon without knowing that individual knows how to properly use the weapon, knows how to safely use the weapon, and has had a background check.
Marino expects vigorous debate when the measure goes to the full House. And Governor Edwards could veto this bill if it does clear the legislature. This afternoon, he did not indicate he would do so in his weekly radio address. Lee?